Okay. Thanks a lot, Dave. Appreciate the introduction. Been around a long time, a lot of experience. Basically, it just means I'm a pretty old guy. Anyways, I think he asked me to go first, so uh, I won't try to put you to sleep before Sheldon gets up. But um, I guess the first thing I just want to say is, um, this is sort of the way that it kind of evolved for me as a coach. We worked through different things when we had certain players, certain things worked better. But this is sort of, uh, you know, what evolved over time. Just seemed to be the thing that worked the best for the teams that I was with, uh, based on the personnel that we had and what some of the offenses were doing. Okay, uh, so when you're developing your defensive system, okay, there's lots of things like this. There's different options of dealing with different blocking schemes and different coverages for different pass concepts and all that kind of stuff. But basically, I just stole this. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. So know the enemy. You want to look at what you're going to have to defend in your league or your conference, and know yourself. Know who's going to have to execute certain skills, and is it reasonable to ask that player or that position to execute those kinds of things? And you want to sort of put the plan together in that kind of a way. There's always more than one way to skin a cat, but regardless what it is you choose, you got to match what you're doing with the capabilities of your kids. You got to teach it well. The kids have to know what to do and why they're doing it, and you have to practice it. You have to drill it weekly. Most of these things are diminishing skills. If you don't do them during the week, they're probably not going to do them when you get to the game. But if you follow those kinds of things, regardless of what you've chosen, the kids will probably do a pretty good job for you. The last sort of thing here is there isn't a silver bullet. Like uh, the offensive guys are doing a real good job trying to figure out ways to sort of attack you. But if you're gonna, whatever it is you just decide to choose, just constant work to keep it constantly effective. So this is sort of what I'll do. Just try and explain what we mean by spill, how I try to teach it, and the reasons that's sort of what I adopted over time. So the spill concept is basically you just fill in, as an inside gap gets created, you're going to fill the inside gap. You're trying to force the offense to run sideways rather than run north-south. You're trying to force the ball carrier to kind of bounce, maybe give up a little bit of ground to get to try and out leverage you. And that's, we're hoping, is going to create a little bit of time and let the defense rally to the ball. Sort of the guideline that I kind of have talked to the kids about: if you are running the ball, the offense is running the ball to the field side, we are trying, whether it's a play where they're bringing pullers, or it's just a stretch play or something to the wide side of the field, we're trying to keep them on their side of the line of scrimmage to the wide side hash. If they're running into the boundary, we're trying to keep the ball in the line of scrimmage till they get to the top of the numbers on the boundary side. That's given the defensive backfield players, that gives them enough time to sort of diagnose the play and sort of react up, get off the block and react up to help. Most of the time when we talk about spill, it's versus kind of a trap block on a power run or a counter run. And that's sort of, basically what I'll try to use to sort of explain what it is I'm talking about. But, real quick, it's a pretty simple little diagram here, but, we're getting a double team on the tackle on the 3 technique there. The backside guard is pulling, he's kicking out the end man on the line of scrimmage. And the back is trying to just run through that crease. He's trying to get through that crease that gets created when they kick out the rush and off the double. Now they're gonna come off the deuce and all that kind of thing, and there's going to be cutoff blocks and everything that we got to get over top of, but that's just part of the deal. So the spill or we're going to wrong arm that puller. So he's coming underneath. He's trying to get up where that crease is supposed to get created. And tried to just draw sort of what I meant by that bubble. And then we got to get our scrapers over top. And, there's going to be, like I said, cutoff blocks. They got to get over top of those cutoff blocks. And, in this picture here, the MAC is trying to get to the hip, the outside hip of the ball carrier, and the Will is trying to get to the inside hip. We're trying to bracket that ball carrier. So teaching the spill technique. So regardless, I guess, of who ends up being the guy that's going to be the spill player, there's a couple things that to keep it checkers rather than make it chess. Try to have these sort of things the same for everybody, regardless of the position they play. So the stance, the alignment, their key, and their first step. Okay, so the first step is going to be with the near foot to the midline of the blocker. And the second step is going to be a reaction step. Now he's going to get various types of blocks. Okay, he's going to get a base block where they're going to try and widen them and push him off the line of scrimmage. He may get a reach block where they're trying to seal him inside and get outside. He might get a pass set. He might get a down block where the quarterback is reading him and he's basically unblocked, or he's going to get, a down block with some pullers. And that's basically the one we're going to talk about. So if you're a C-gap player, and so, if it's a 40 front, it's probably going to be the defensive end. The defense that I like to run is a 34. So it could be a defensive end. It could be an outside linebacker, could be an inside linebacker, could be a halfback, could even be the boundary corner. But if I'm the C-gap player, it doesn't matter who I am. Okay, I'm going to have the same key, close to the same alignment, the same footwork. The wrong arm technique is going to be the same. And I'm going to ask that guy to get vertical and disrupt any second player that's involved. So the keys. Okay, so this is typed in here as a C-gap defender. Okay, like I said, it could be any of those guys that are listed, but it's going to be the exact same thing if that's the players in the B gap. It's going to be the exact same thing if the players in the A gap. We don't. It's going to be impossible to teach a guy that if I blitz the C gap, I do this. If I blitz the B gap, I do something different. So it's gotta be constant. And his key is always going to be that the lineman inside his gap. So the C gap defenders, they're going to key the offensive tackle first. We're going to ask him to read the near knee of the offensive tackle on his first step. That's going to tell him what his second step is going to be. So if he gets, those various blocks, the tackle is going to be moving in a certain direction. He's got a platform to push off of if he has to get back on a reach block, if he has to adjust because it's a pass play. If he's blocking, if it's a base block out of him, he's just going to stay on that track on the second step. If he gets a down block, then it kind of goes to number 2. We want his eyes off the tackle and straight down the heel of the offensive line. Got to check for pullers. If he gets pullers, we're gonna deal with that. If he doesn't get the pullers, his eyes go from where the pullers would be. Now he's going to go to the mesh. and he's gonna be the 50-50 player for us if we get that. The alignment. Okay, so it's basically the same for all the players, regardless of position. We would like to be pretty close to 1.5 yards outside the tackle, whether it's a static defensive end or if it's an outside linebacker rolling into the blitz, etc. We want them angled close to 45 degrees towards the offensive tackle. His first step should be directly at the midline of the offensive tackle. The inside foot is back, and the first step is with the inside foot, the near foot. Okay, his center of gravity should be in front of his base, regardless of the stance. If it's 2-point, 3-point, or 4-point, we need to be taking a 4 to 6 inch step with that near foot to have a chance to make this play. Anyways, here we go. I got it kind of in the wrong spot here, but so basically here, this is teaching, this fellow's a linebacker, but we're just introducing this. So we've sort of moved them up basically where a defensive end would be. As he progresses along, we're going to move him from the outside linebacker position and have him roll into this. But basically, he's got his outside foot up. He's going to take his first step is going to be just with that inside foot, and he should be heading directly for this old man right in the middle here. So he should be, that's all it is. Now it's not a great step, but that's basically the right thing, and almost like he catches his toe in the ground there. So that's all we're saying. That's the first step. At that point, he's going to have to read what's kind of going on and react to it. So here it is kind of written out if you want to take a picture of it or anything. But the first step is with the near foot, stepping into where the midline of the offensive tackle would be. Okay. Want him to sink as much weight onto that near foot and be prepared for the base block. That's what happens the quickest. He's got to get weight on that near foot. Okay. If it ends up being the base block, his second step, he's going to try to just engage that guy and power through him. If it's a reach block or a pass block, he's got a platform, that inside foot, he can push off and react to those other types of blocks. The second step versus the down block. So the key gives you the down block. You see that tackle now in the picture there. He's moved quite a ways. I just got him out of there so that he wouldn't mess up my little drawing there. But the second step's with the outside foot. Okay. And that gives him a platform again to redirect if he gets the puller. Okay. So he sees the puller coming. He's going to push off that outside foot and he's going to attack the puller. He's trying to get to him as close to as far inside as he possibly can. That's what he's trying to do. So there's that first step. He's taking that first step. I'll try and just get the second step. So there's the second step. And it's pretty good. And you can see it's kind of set up so that they put that second step right on that hash mark. And you can sort of see he's going to push off, and that little blue bag there, that we're saying that's the guy who's pulling at him. That's the guy he's redirecting to. Okay, so he actually, I'll just back it up a little bit and kind of play it through. He does a pretty good job here. You can just see he does a nice job of just redirecting off that second step. So he's about to plant the first, redirects off the second, and he's trying to get down as close as he can inside to have an opportunity to wrong arm that guy. Okay, so he's racing down the line of scrimmage there towards that puller. Okay, we want to meet him, like I said, as far as we can inside. Okay, now just prior to being close enough for him to get his hands on you, okay, we want to dip, bend our ankles, knees, and hips. Like, we don't want to just bend at the waist. We got to bend our knees, okay? And we may have to even redirect and give up a little bit of ground. Okay, we don't want to make head-on contact with this guy whatsoever. So like I said, if this was, a big 240-pound defensive end, he might be able to do that, take that guy on straight up. But if that happens to be a halfback, we don't want him trying to take on a 300-pound guy. He wouldn't be around for too many games. But we're going to rip with the outside of the upfield arm. We're trying to touch grass on the bottom, and we're trying to bring that arm right up and through, and my thumb is trying to touch my nameplate. The only contact that I would like to have is just with that arm. My shoulder and everything don't want contact. And you want the guy to think about almost exposing his back numbers to the puller. They're going to be taught to log that player, to pin him inside there. If we turn our back to him, he actually sort of puts his hands on our back, and he actually helps us go where we're trying to go. Okay. And once the rip is complete, we want to get vertical. As quick as we can, we want to get vertical. We're trying to get up and disrupt the second player. So in this one here, they're pulling two. They've got the center and the backside tackle. They're pulling both of them. Okay, so we get that down block. Eyes go down. We see him coming. We attack the puller. We run that wrong arm. We get vertical, just trying to get in the road and disrupt the second puller. Now, if there isn't a second puller, we're doing that little deal. We already saw this picture. We're trying to just force the back to bubble, get off his track, create time for the rest of the defense to get where they need to be going. This is a grade 11 guy. Okay, and so again, this is just an introduction kind of stage. So he's a linebacker, but we're starting him right here. And these are just linebackers just running this little drill. So he should be reading the tackle. So he gets that. He's cheating a little bit. He's too high, but he's already trying to bend. Okay, but should be a straight line step. Then he should get that second step in the ground, and that's what he's going to redirect on. Now, what he should do is try to close that space, meet that puller as far inside as he can. You're going to dip and rip and almost try to turn his back to that guy. And he doesn't do a bad job, but he's got to get more of a turn. He's got to get his body turned a little bit. Okay. And then we're asking to turn up and get vertical as quick as you can. So that's basically what we're sort of saying for him to do. Why spill? Okay, so this technique can be executed. These are the reasons why I kind of opted to do this. Okay, anybody can execute this. Okay, if you have any intentions of, if you're playing a 40 and you're blitzing people, it could be the outside linebacker, could be the inside linebacker. If you're playing a 34, like I prefer to play, then there's going to be a lot of different people that have that role. So we have to practice a technique that's going to be possible for everybody to do it. So it could be, the big three tech, if it happens in the B gap, or it could be the boundary corner, but they should all be able to execute it. So here's just an example of a 42 front, and there's the defensive end doing it. There's a 34, there's the outside linebacker doing it. There's the halfback doing it. But all those things are exactly the same. My lines in the picture aren't great because this one here isn't pointed to the midline of that tackle, but that's what it should be. Everybody should be doing the same thing. So this is a diminishing skill, obviously, just like, pass rush stuff, backpedaling and all those things. They have to be practiced every week or you get worse at them. So any defender who is going to be put in that position has got to practice it. So in a 34 defense, probably the only guy that wouldn't do this would be the field side corner. Everybody else might get an opportunity to do it. So it's easy to incorporate it into your weekly practice plan because you want everybody to do it. And there's no sense in doing it if we're going to do it lousy. It gives somebody an opportunity. There can be somebody that's kind of specializes in that. So, once a week you're sending this group or you're sending that group to the coach X and he's going to work it. And when everybody's doing it, you're going to see it on the field. You're going to see it on the video. You're going to hear people talking about it over and over again. And it eventually sinks in and hopefully everybody gets good at it. The other thing that's important is when you make the playbook up, you sort of, the way I sort of do is I don't know if this is the right word, but I just call it a matrix, skill matrix. There's a cap to how much stuff a guy can learn and a guy can practice and be effective at in a game. So again, playing at 34, we want to have different people being in this gap, being in that gap to defend a run play, or to maybe we think it's a pass, but it turns into a run, all those kind of things. But if we're all working on the same deal, okay, that makes it a little bit easier to put it in. If one guy has to do 3 different things when he blitzes, then it's going to be almost impossible to get him practice time to do that. And the other thing that matters too is the scrapers or the power players, whatever you want to call them, the guys that have to fill off the spill player, if it's a spill player every time, regardless who it is, their fit is the same all the time. But now if it's a defensive end and then it goes to a defensive back and the fit is different, that means he's got more stuff to practice. That has to be worked into the week. So if everybody's doing the same thing, obviously everybody gets an opportunity to practice that skill, but the players that fit around it are doing the same thing regardless of who's doing it. So that makes things a little bit easier. Okay, I sort of talked about this already. The same thing for the cover players, the add-ins, if their man comes in to help block, those guys, everything fits the same. It doesn't matter who's the guy that's involved with doing it. The other thing, and I think I mentioned this already, but the key, the read, the technique, they all transfer when the defender's in the A gap, the B gap, or the C gap. And again, all the non-box players, the scrapers, the add-ins, the cover players, their fit stays the same. So again, it's just easier to kind of practice. So here's just an example, just drew this one up. This is a play where they're going to, against a 42 front here, they're trying to attack the weak B gap here, and they're blocking the nose in, they're blocking the end out, they're bringing the backside tackle, folding them up through the B gap, and same thing, the will linebacker is going to see that puller, he's going to spill that, he's going to get underneath it, force the thing to bounce, and then the other scraping linebacker, he's fitting outside of that block. Now here's this guy's a pretty good player here, Aaron Donald. He's the B gap player, but you can see him. He's just he's running the spill on I think it's the guard from the backside, comes down, he does a rip, he shows us his numbers, he gets upfield and does a pretty good job. Well, I figured if this guy could do it, shoot, anybody could do it. And this is, I guess, just the last thing here. This is sort of, this was the kind of defining moment when stopped boxing and went to spill. Teams were, I called this bend motion. So they take, the number 3, the number 2 slot back, and they would run them across the field. And just prior to the snap, maybe he's at the backside guard, and they're running them out, and he's just running into the flat on the short side of the field there. But at that time, we used to track that guy, or we'd rotate the safety down. So, in this picture here, like this dime, he is cooking, trying to stay with this guy. His coverage responsibility, he is cooking. And then all of a sudden, they do it 2 or 3 times, and then they do this. That guy comes across and he kicks out the end. And meanwhile, our dime is running 100 miles an hour. Now he's got to make a 90-degree turn and fit up into that little crease they've developed. So that was sort of the moment when I felt this system would be a little bit better. Okay, it gave that dime. The end came underneath that bend block from that slot back. Ball gets bounced outside. The dime's got a lot better opportunity to get leverage on the ball carry and help make a stop for a minimal gain. So I think that's it for me.
Thanks, Paul. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Yeah, Dave, I can see you. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Yeah, right on. All right. Yeah, thanks, Paul. A little bit about Paul. I come from Paul's coaching tree, I guess. He coached me. I was my D coordinator of the Rams. So a lot of the things I do, I owe to him. So thanks for that, Paul. Kind of a different look at defeating pullers. So obviously, like Paul said, there's more than one way to skin a cat. So this is just another approach to it. So my information is there if you want to reach out and talk football. You can email me or text me. My number is there if you want to reach out and we can have a discussion. But again, this is about defeating pullers. Okay. So what we do is we call a force or set the edge. So we have a common theme in our defense of something called set the edge. So we want to set an edge all the time. This is commonly called force for the most part, right? If you look it up, it could be called force. So the first thing you should ask, and kind of what Paul alluded to too, is why do teams pull? Why are they pulling a lineman? Why are they pulling tight ends? Why do they pull a fullback, right? Or why do they sub a slot back? Essentially what they're trying to do is they're trying to out-gap you. They're trying to create a gap on the opposite side of the field where you might not have a gap defender. All right, so our philosophy is based upon how do we defend what they're trying to accomplish, essentially. Okay, so our force, our philosophy behind it, essentially the objective of force is to compress the gap and not let the ball carrier get outside of you. Okay, so we're trying to box everything, another term for it. All right, I know we had a presentation last year of the terminology of football. I think that was Coach Harrison. And again, this is another example of that force, box, set the edge. There's a lot of different terminology for that. So essentially with force, we accomplish this by being very tight off the down block. Okay, we want to replace the down block essentially and collision the upfield leg or shoulder of the puller. Okay, so we're going to essentially try to collision that puller. We try to maintain an outside free arm to make the tackle if the ball carrier decides to try to stretch it or play outside. All right, so that's kind of our philosophy behind force. Okay, so here's an illustration. If any D-line coaches out there want a great resource, Craig Rowe is a great resource. He played for still plays for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I'm not so sure where that is right now, but a very good resource for defensive line play is Craig Rowe. I just follow him on Twitter and I bought his book. It's pretty good. But this is a picture from his Twitter, and it's just you can see the defensive lineman with that outside position, the attacking a puller, right, with an outside free arm. Again, that's kind of the perfect position for force for us. Okay, so some pros for force, or why we run set the edge. We set an edge for a shorter distance for pursuit. So our linebackers have a shorter distance of pursuit, so that it's a faster, it's a straight line to the running back. Generally not reliant on DBs to fill. If we're setting an edge or forcing the running back to go forward, we're not relying on a defensive back who's maybe in man coverage as a force defender, or maybe 15, 20 yards off the ball as a force defender, right? So we're not relying on DBs to fill. We're trying to fill with our linebackers. It's a common theme, general philosophy. I know it's transferable. General philosophy of nothing gets outside contain, right? So you probably hear it a lot of contain, a lot of talk of boxing, setting an edge. That's a general philosophy for our defense. It's a transferable skill, commonly used on special teams, right? So how often on special teams do you want to keep contain or set an edge, right? Or make the returner go inside of you, right, to pursue, right? So in our system, it's a transferable skill. It's pretty easy to teach for us. The skill allows for use of different techniques. All right, it's not just one thing that you need to do. There's a different approaches for different players. All right, so if you're a 180-pound DB, you're probably going to not force or set an edge the same as a 260-pound defensive lineman. All right, so it allows different techniques for different body types. It's effective versus multiple pullers. All right, the chances of affecting that second puller is high, and it's effective for contain versus play action pass. Right, so if you're a C gap defender, and we see quite a lot in our league where we see pullers on play action pass. Right, if we get caught inside, there's nobody containing the quarterback. So if we try to set that edge or force on the edge, we still are in a good place to contain the quarterback if they do some kind of a boot or they just really move around in the pocket like we see with very athletic quarterbacks. So those are the pros of what we do. Again, we call it set the edge, but again, box or force are synonyms for that. So some cons, it can be hard on your shoulders depending on your technique, right? It can be some pretty big hits in there. You can really have some big collisions on your shoulders. We needed to adapt to rule changes. All right, we used to be a team that if a DB was blitzing and he saw a puller, he would just cut the upfield lane. Obviously now with the rules changes in the league, anybody that started outside the box and enters the box cannot cut inside the box. So that's a rule that we needed to adapt for. It's also an adaptation to a system, right? If we have C-gap blitzes and like Paul, we run a 3-front. So we do have some C-gap blitzers that need to learn this skill. And you do need a pretty good read by the defensive line, right? You need to read the puller, the linebacker or the DB, whoever's forcing or setting the edge needs to read or see the puller. And we try to train that a lot. And again, even though we try to set an edge, we still can be a little bit outside of the pass rush lane in play action pass if we get washed out by that puller. Okay, so we're going to look at this essentially in two different ways. A one-man pull game where we have a true set the edge defender and as generally the C-gap defender. We'll see a couple of examples where it's a B-gap defender, but generally it's the C-gap defender. This may be a D lineman, linebacker, or a DB, depending on the front or the puller and whatever the possible blitz is. So this, again, is a transferable skill. All right, so take a little look at film here. Okay, so here's an example of double tight. Okay, we're just in a 4-front here. With double tight, quite often what that does is activate DBs into the box, and it creates gaps, right? So it depends how you want to play your end against the tight end. If you're a D gap or a C gap, it's really going to influence where or how he's going to play. Okay, so we're going to see a pull onto our rush end here. Okay, all he does here is he's going to attack the upfield leg. Right, by attacking the upfield leg, he essentially creates a pile. By creating a pile, what he does is he stops the running back from going in a straight line. And after that, you'll see inside pursuit by our inside linebacker. Does a pretty good job of inside pursuing and making a tackle. All right, so what we're trying to do there is we're just trying to set an edge, boom. All right, we get that edge set with the cut, and then our linebackers have a short distance of pursuit to the running back. So we'll see it from the end zone here. Get that cut on the pulling tackle, creates an edge, allows our linebackers to scrape over top and fill inside. Okay, here's another example. In this one, we have a blitzer, so a C-gap blitzer. So he's going to blitz, okay, try to time it up as best as possible. He gets a pulling guard, right? He's just going to try to set that edge, right? At that point, with that edge set, ideally there's a shorter line of pursuit for our inside linebacker, which is 56 in this case, right? He gets kind of caught up a little bit, but because of the fact the running back had to stop his feet, we get good pursuit from our other inside linebacker and our free safety. So it turns into a 3-yard gain, which we'll take on first down. Okay, so we'll see this from the end zone real quick. We got a blitz from our will linebacker. Right, does a good job, right? So it's not super hard on the shoulder here. He's just trying to set an edge on big 66. All right, boom. And as that happens, 56 in this case sees the puller. He's just going to follow that puller, and ideally he makes the tackle, but he does a good job of making the running back stop his feet. Let me get those. Okay. This one, we do get a pretty late read by an outside linebacker. Again, we get a tight end to the field side, which creates a D gap. Our Sam linebacker is activated into the box. So at this point, we get a pretty late read on the puller by our Sam. So at this point, he's kind of inside a little bit too much. He's going to work really hard to kind of get back outside in this case, right, to set the edge. You can see the running back was trying to stretch. He's going to cut it up underneath our edge defender, and our pursuit is going to fit inside. Okay, see this. I put these clips in here for Paul so he could see his nephew Danny there on the edge. Little throwback. All right, so we get a good read on the puller by 46, our inside linebacker. 32 sets the edge, although being a little bit late, but he still sets the edge. And we get a good fill by Cole Bankick, the inside linebacker there. Pretty good linebacker. Hey, next one here. Always count on crappy film from Saskatoon. All right, so we get a puller. Okay, so what we see here now is an inside pull, right? And our linebacker here is going to read it and set the edge inside. So he's going to set the edge on the puller, right? Making the running back fit it up inside to our pursuit. From the end zone here, we'll see our inside linebacker reads the puller. Okay, 41 will read the puller. He's right here. Just got no reading here. He's right here, right? And he's going to see this puller coming from the boundary side. So he sees the puller, fits it, and attacks the upfield leg, essentially creating a pile, allowing it to run back to our pursuit, right? Which is from our defensive end and our nose and our backside inside linebacker. Okay, two-man pull. Again, this is ideally we want to affect the second puller, essentially taking 2 for 1. Make the second puller turn shoulders, change direction, right? The worst thing he can do is just keep going unabated to the second level, because that's what they want to do. They want to get to the second level and beat up on a DB for the most part, as I know linemen love to find a little guy out there and try to squish him. Essentially what we want to do is create a pile. Again, take 2 for 1. Okay. So this is going to end up being jet away, but our focus is going to be the weak side end here. All right, he's going to see the puller. All right, he's going to attack the outside of the puller. Right, and what he's going to do is he's going to affect the second puller. Right, so you can see we're taking 2 for 1, right, on that puller. Okay, it ends up being jet away. All right, we get good pursuit there, but yeah. Well, the focus is on the 2-man pull. Okay. Boom. Okay. And this is where it could end up being a little bit harder on the shoulders, just because you're hitting that man with your right shoulder, but he does a good job of shearing off a little bit and affecting the second puller. Okay. Next one here. So this is one now in our league would be deemed illegal. So we have to change this in our system a little bit, but our Sam linebacker activates when he sees, all right, this is a base, we have a fullback, see a pulling guard, right? He's going to attack the outside shoulder, boom, essentially affecting the second puller, not allowing him to get through. Pursuit comes after that point, right? And we get a no gain or a 2-yard gain. Okay. So our Sam linebacker is going to see the puller, create a pile, right? Pursuit's going to come and fill the edge. Okay. Ideally, again, like we said, it's going to affect the second puller. Okay. Again, we got an outside linebacker. Okay, he's not going to cut this time. He's just going to see the guard. All right, the G2 pull. All right, he's going to be nice and low, get under that puller, set an edge, force the action to come back to our linebackers. Okay. And we're not in a great situation because we're in a 5 front, but because we do a good job of pursuing, right, we end up getting a pretty good fill on that. So you can see number 9 here, Sam linebacker. He's going to see the puller, be under the puller, set the edge, right? He's nice and low, right? Sometimes it's harder to get lower than the opposite guy, but that's an edge. We get good pursuit, and again, we're forcing it inside. Right. So again, we got double tight, and it's going to kind of force our hand a little bit. We do a good job by our end taking the puller, right? He's going to get nice and low, try to affect the second puller. He doesn't affect the second puller, but because he's so aggressive and he's hitting this puller 3 yards in the backfield, the running back's got to stop his feet, right? So he stops his feet, turns his shoulders back, and we got a good line of pursuit, all right, where we have 11 guys. Okay, so our mindset or our thinking is out here we got 2 guys, over here we got 10 guys. All right, so we want to force them back to our 10 guys. That's kind of what's okay. Would have been really, really good if our will linebacker would have played the mesh a little bit better, but we still get on 2nd and 7 they gain 1 yard. Pretty good shape. Okay, you can see that technique again, nice and low. Right, you know, essentially attack that man's inside or upfield leg, make the running back stop his feet, and then we got a wall of pursuit. Okay, just some things that we talk about, and actually Paul alluded to this earlier. That sub block, all right, essentially added box players are accounted for by where the linebackers. If there's a D line in C gap, we usually play under the sub. Okay, so this is where we're going to play under that sub because we have outside leverage in our 3-4 defense. Okay, so when you see this sub here, and UBC is pretty famous for it. We like to sub a lot. We're going to see that sub coming from 4 strong across the formation. Again, we don't track or chase those subbers, so we're always going to have an outside leverage player on that. All right, so in that case, we just activate the Sam into the box, and the will would take the tracking player. But you can see the technique changes a little bit. He still set the edge, but he's going to be kind of a more of an inside look. We want to set the edge, but he wants to play with inside leverage instead of outside leverage. Okay. And you can see that our will linebacker plays off of that, and he fits in the box as he gets added to the box with the sub. Okay. Some exceptions or special situations that we deal with. All right. So essentially, if there's a C-gap blitzer, okay, the D lineman is usually going to stunt into B. All right. So if he stunts into B and he gets a down block, okay, so as you'll see here, there's going to be a down block. He won't be able to get into B. So in this case, there's actually he actually ends up wrong arming because he needs to be the inside defender. And we only do this when we have an outside blitzer. Okay. And we just teach that guy to be essentially chasing the butt. And he's actually going to use a spill technique because we have an outside. So he's just going to replace that B gap that he would normally take. So see, 99 is the rush end. Okay. He's going to be under that because that's the B gap he's supposed to be in, right? And our C gap defender is going to be coming ideally a little bit more controlled, but it is what it is. Same idea, same play. Now we get this C gap blitzer, D gap defender, a down block, and a pull. All right, so they're pulling. We're under it, and our blitzer is over it. So that's an opportunity to actually use a spill technique with a force technique. And we generally do that with that C gap blitz. Okay. Here's an example of another double tight. Okay, so what happens is we get good penetration here, and we force or set an edge, right, with our defensive end. We're transitioning into a forefront here. We set the edge on the puller, all right, but because we're getting pinned, all right, as you can see, we're getting pinned right here, all right, it does force him to bump, all right, but again, we're just kind of from there going to do a pursue, all right, and because we pursue fairly well on this play, he has to force it back in. Getting a minimal gain. Okay. The only other situation we really deal with is an interior blitzer. Okay, so again, if we have an interior blitzer and we see the puller, again, he's going to set that edge. All right, so what you're going to see, all right, is this guy's going to interior blitz. This guy's going to loop around. All right, as this guy interior blitzes, he's going to see the puller and he's going to try to set the edge on the puller. Okay, so boom, he's trying to set that edge. All right, does a pretty good job of setting that edge on the puller, and then from there, our inside looper is going to make a play on the running back. Boom, and then we get there to force push. Hey. This one, another special situation. We got a double puller. Okay, again, we're going to essentially take that leg or take that outside leg, try to affect second puller, which we do in this case. We affect that second puller, right? Make the running back run it midline where we have areas of pursuit. So boom, boom, affect second puller. Second puller in this case does absolutely nothing. So our linebacker who's shifting over, sliding over, he's free to make a tackle in a pretty compressed gap, which is pretty much the ideal situation. Okay, a couple of drills for linebackers that we run. All right, you can do this on the old donut, or you can do it on bags. Here's an example of us doing it on some bags. Again, all we're going to do is see the puller, right, and force the puller. So this is the institution of the rule change where we can't cut that guy anymore. So what we're trying to do is get across his face to set an edge, keep an outside arm free. Okay. Again, see the puller, react to the puller, set an edge, outside arm free. See the puller, outside arm. Okay. We want to sit a little bit longer than 49 does here. All right. Generally, we don't just run by the blocker, but we're going to sit on that and try to compress it back in, ideally, if we can. It's a little different angle on it. See the puller, compress the puller. All right, that's my deal. So I think we're just opening up for questions. I'll stop sharing. All right, so I'll just take this first one. I think it's for me because I think I'm the only one that cuts. Coach and fan just asked, what determines if your edge player cuts versus takes on pullers on his feet? Really, we can cut if he's a box player, right, by rule, right? So if he's a box player, he can cut any puller, and I just give him free reign. Like, if you want to cut him, right? First couple plays in a game, I'm going to slow those O-linemen down, just cut them, right? Hey, believe me, they'll cut you, right? They will cut you. So you take that puller, all right? If you're a box player, you're allowed to cut because you're boxed into the box. Cut them, right? Slow them down. Hopefully affect the second puller, right? If you're an outside the box player, obviously you can't cut entering the box. So we're going to try to take that on with that inside shoulder, keep the outside arm free. Hopefully that answers your question, Brett.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Coach Gray. Coaches, if you have some questions, feel free to put them in the chat there or go ahead and unmute yourself and ask them. But if we kind of try to generally summarize the two, you kind of have that we start with the spill technique where we're coming underneath the blocker, trying to stay in that gap with the idea that the pulling guards are creating more gaps or they are moving the gaps. So we're spilling underneath it to try to keep that gap integrity with the idea that the ball goes laterally and we scrape over the top in pursuit. And then secondly, Coach Gray talked on setting the edge. So there we might stay on the outside, which then potentially creates those extra gaps or moves the gaps inside. And we are filling in a more downhill manner, trying to get the ball to go vertically. So my question to both of you guys would be, you both went in great detail on the players setting the edge or the players spilling, but can you talk anything specific about how you would coach the eyes, hands, and feet of the scrape players in spill technique for Coach Doss and those fill players for the set the edge? What are you teaching those pursuit players? Doss, why don't you go first?
Sure. So basically what the rules are, obviously, as soon as we get, assuming that the puller's coming from the backside inside linebacker, he should be, letting the front side guy know what's going on. So he's going to be making a puller call. At that moment, things change for both those inside linebackers. We're going to ask the front side guy, the guy they're pulling to, his job is to get leverage on the outside of the ball carrier. So he's going to take off on a bit of an arc. He's going to go over top of any cutoff block that shows up. He's going over top of it, and he's trying to get outside leverage on that. The backside guy, he's got to stay on the back hip of the ball carrier. He can't get even with the quarterback until he's read the mesh. He's got to know who's got the football. Once he realizes the ball's in the running back's hands and he's going to the opposite side of center, his job is to bracket the inside hip of the ball carrier. And he's working over top of any cutoff block, and he's trying to arc up. And both those guys, as they approach the ball carrier, they're trying to get their near foot. So, it's going to be the inside foot of that outside of the linebacker that's got outside leverage. he wants to get that inside foot up, and he's kind of going to work to get in a little bit of a shuffle with the near foot up again. So he's got a platform to push off if the guy continues to try and take it outside. And the backside guy, he keeps backside leverage on the football. He's over top of any cutoff block, and he's just going to dip and rip in the same manner if there is a cutoff block, and he's trying to come up to that inside hip. Same thing, the near foot is going to be up in case he does get the guy trying to get it cut back. I don't know if that answers what you're.
Yep. No,
what
it
you're
does.
asking.
Yeah, I'm just curious how you guys, specifically are, what are their keys? What are they looking for? And what are they doing with their eyes, hands, feet? So you answered that. And then Coach Gray, what about from your side?
Yeah, for sure. The biggest thing is communication, right? Communicating those pullers. We read guard for our inside linebackers, guard to back. And they're reading that window, right? So if the window, like we say, if the window gets dirty, if the puller gets through that window, if the window gets dirty, essentially for our inside linebacker to the pull side, we're going to fit inside that puller every time. So again, we're going to try to stay square. We're going to arm over any release, all right, off of any doubles. We're going to arm over that. We're going to try to keep our shoulders square, and we're just going to fit that running back in that gap that's created inside the puller, right? Because that's where the gap should be. If we're setting an edge properly, we're going to fit inside that puller, keep our shoulders square, and just kind of fill that gap, arm overing any blocks that come to us. But yeah, like Coach said, we got to communicate that puller or those pullers. That's huge, all right? And look at the window, look at the vision, right? Read the guards first, or read the window first before you read the back, because the back's always on counter, or power is always going to take you away from where he wants to go. So don't get caught looking at the back and not seeing a dirty window.
Is like one of the best things I've kind of found in practice is this. If you're working with the linebackers and you're working on, tracking these pullers and stuff, is to run the offense's plays without a backfield, so they get used to that, those linemen more often than not are going to take you to the play. The looking into the backfield and the mesh and stuff can get you in a bad spot. But, during the course of the week, if you can find the opportunity to just have those guys fit up properly without any backfield, but just the offensive line, and that was an effective thing that I kind of found anyway.
That's perfect. Coach Gray, you talked a little bit about change ups, versus a sub. You might change it up a little bit when you're going from from C gap to B gap. You might change it up a little bit. And then Doss, for you, do you have any situations, or would something dictate that you would game plan to not spill? You would set the edge in certain situations?
Yeah, you're gonna game plan things differently and stuff like that. But the main idea that I have is that I don't want the kids doing something they're not good at. I want them doing what they do best for the most amount of plays in the game. And I don't want to, trying to get them to do something that we haven't properly prepared them for, they haven't practiced enough. And then those are the plays we get beat on. I want them doing something they're confident in. They know exactly what they're doing. If we get to a situation where, for whatever reason, we just can't wrong on something, then that might be, for that week, for that particular game plan, that might be something we change. But for the most part, I want to stick to what they do best and let them do the best thing they do as often as possible in the game. That's sort of my philosophy.
And Coach, if you have something to add to that, feel free. I know you addressed it already, but if there's anything else, then jump in.
Yeah, no, like Coach said, and the biggest thing with us is that transferable skill, right? Just biggest thing why we want to set an edge or keep contained is because it's transferable. But there's a question in the chat. I'll just read it out.
Yep, go ahead.
Sounds like both coaches are. This is from Coach Hall. It sounds like both coaches are teaching linebackers to diagnose and play from depth rather than playing hard downhill. Is that correct? And for me, for sure, very wise man, Alec Smith told me that for linebackers, space buys you time, right? So we want to stay at depth. That's why we want to arm over and stay at depth and then fit once we diagnose. All right, we don't want to just get stuck in our gap and try to fill it, right? Because what will end up happening if we just put our nose down and try to fill a gap is we'll end up with two guys in the same gap, especially with pullers, right? Because they're moving the gap. So we have to diagnose from space, play with good depth, play with good vision, and then once we see the puller, then we can fit off that puller.
Yeah, I would say the exact same thing that Sheldon said, like would want to play from depth. Like the base front that I'm talking about, it's a leverage front. It's not a true gap scheme. Like once we add a fourth or a fifth guy, then it becomes a gap scheme. But the base front is leverage. And so they have to always play from depth. And so it goes back to the same kind of idea that we want them doing the same thing, be doing what you do well the most often. So even when we add the fourth guy and it becomes a gap front, add the fifth guy, it's a gap front again. We want them doing the same thing, what they're used to, what they've become good at. So depth, like you said, depth buys you time. As soon as you start encroaching on the line of scrimmage, if the offensive line displaces your D lineman, somebody's going to get cut off and they can't get to where they're supposed to be. That's what Sheldon said goes exactly what I would agree with. Playing from depth, and you'll get opportunities to be a downhill player and come up and fit somebody really hard. But that's what my job is as a linebacker, is getting in position where I can get to the ball carrier regardless of where it is. So.
And then Coach Gray, maybe you can touch on this first. When deciding what you're going to do, set the edge or spill or how do you take in size and speed of your personnel? Does that factor in and you adjust to what you have with size and speed, or are you going to adapt the players that you have to fit your set the edge mindset?
I think we'll keep the system, because again, like Coach said, that's what we've been practicing, that's what we've been working on. We may teach different techniques, right? So instead of taking with a solid shoulder, with our shoulders parallel to the line of scrimmage, essentially half a man with the defensive lineman, we'll come in more square where we can try to almost rip by that guy with a blitzing defensive back, like we're blitzing a halfback. We'll try to take less of a man on, and that's more technique than it is change in system. And we'll teach them those techniques. Like Coach said, we got to practice this, and we practice it quite a bit. And we teach different techniques to different position groups. So linebacker won't do the same technique as a defensive end, for example. It'll be a little bit different, and just essentially how much body they'll give to the technique, I guess.
Yeah, well, I think I sort of answered this one, but the idea game is we want the offense to have unknowns prior to the snap happening. Like, when they don't know who they're supposed to block, that's a good thing for us. But, the only way we can do that is that we give the kid an opportunity with his size and strength and speed and all those kind of things to do something that he's really, truly capable of doing. So we practice this system because everybody. It doesn't matter who you are, everybody can do it. And again, the scrapers, if you call the power player, the guy who's got to get over top of the the puller and get leverage on it. His fit, we want his fit being the same all the time. We don't want him to have to change how he's going to fit based on who's taking on that puller. That's sort of my philosophy, and I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but I want them doing what they know how to do really well as often as possible. So that's my way of thinking anyway.
And then the last one for me, I'll just offer you guys, if you want to add something to it, because I think you both addressed it already. So it's more of a compliment than anything. But both Sheldon and Dawson have been talking about, it's not just a defensive end technique. They're teaching it to their linebackers, they're teaching it to the perimeter players and all that kind of stuff. So is it fair to say that if you're teaching it to multiple positions, everyone can do it, whether it's set the edge or spill, that if you change up your edge technique and you go to, say, a mash technique where you want that edge player for whatever reason attacking the quarterback right away, to try to force a handoff, for example, that you're confident that whether it's a linebacker replacing them or a different defensive end, they're going to be able to set the edge properly or hit that spill technique because they've done it in your circuit work.
I will first, Sheldon, if that's okay. Yeah, that's sort of the way I kind of look at it. And I actually think maybe the best way to sort of do it is if you give that responsibility to one coach, and however you break up the week, he's going to spend time with the defensive linemen that have to do it. He's going to spend time with the linebackers, the outside linebackers, the inside linebackers, the halfbacks, whoever. So everybody's being taught by the best coach for that skill. They're getting their drill work with the best coach they have each week. So, hoping that, that kind of improves things. If you have guys that, end up having to coach it and they're not an expert at it, I think probably your players aren't going to perform as well. But if you have one guy that really understands it, he knows exactly what should be taking place, regardless of what the skill is that you're teaching. I think that's the best way to coach it. Just because you're the D-line coach, if you're a great pass rush coach and you're going to blitz your halfback on a pass play to try and get a sack or hurry the quarterback, I think if you ask the defensive back coach, who's really good at teaching how to cover, but not so good at teaching how to blitz, it gives that guy less for an opportunity to be successful. But if you got the best pass rush coach doing it, maybe he's gonna have a little more success. I think that's a good way to kind of do it, and it gives you an opportunity as a defensive staff, kind of sit around and plan out the week and make sure that every kid is being coached as best as you possibly can. And I think that gives you the best opportunity for success when the game rolls around,
No, I 100% agree. We do block destruct circuits, tackling circuits, turnover circuits, and we have specific drills that each coach runs, and those coaches are experts in those drills. So for sure, we take our defensive backs and send them to the D line to learn things, and we have everybody learn how to 50-50 or mesh, because pretty much everyone will be a C gap blitzer, right? Other than the field corner, but again, that field corner might be a Falcon in week 2. So we circuit that stuff, and we expect our coaches to be experts in the circuit that they're attaining. So that's a good point, and 100% agree. We should become masters at our craft.